Some people call me a bad apple. Yeah, I may be bruised, but I still taste sweet. Some people call me a bad apple, but I may be the sweetest apple on the tree.
Welcome to the Playing Your Fools podcast. I am your host, Adam Harvin. Today's guest, Eusebio. All right, EJ. Today, I wanted to start this one off by just kind of letting the people get to know you a little bit. And EJ is, a fellow comedian. How long ago did you start?
Let's see. I'll be doing comedy a year in October. I started last year during COVID. One of the two bounds. It's been a weird year. It's been like the longest year, yet the shortest year at the same time.
It seems like you're such a part of the group now. It seems like you've been there the whole time. Like I'm like, yeah, I guess it only has been a year, but I was like, it does seem like it's been longer. Just because you're such a big part of the group now with River Valley Comics and everything. Getting into comedy was a really weird thing for me, and everybody that I finds out that I'm a stand-up comedian and stuff now are like completely surprised. So is it like that with you, or you? I mean, I can imagine it's probably the complete opposite.
There's some people who are completely surprised, who don't know me that well. Like, oh wow, because sometimes at work I'm usually a pretty quiet guy. I'm usually focused on work.
Yeah.
But some of my friends who know me, outside of that, they're like, oh wow, okay, this is something I totally saw you doing. I remember in high school, we were doing like the who's who at the end of for the yearbook, like most talented, most sportsmanlike, blah blah blah. And I campaigned for class clown real hard. I was like, hey, you're gonna vote for me, class clown, right? I just upped the antics. I got voted most talented. That made me so mad, and and my friends was like, oh wow, Mr. Most Talented didn't get class clown. But I felt like it was more of a pity subject, because it was like me and like two other friends, and I was the only one who played an instrument. So I felt like I had that in the bag. But
so it was the instrument thing that got you the most talented?
Yeah, pretty much.
What do you play?
I play trumpet, and I could also riff on a ukulele for a bit. Ukulele was fun. I just felt like a white girl on Tumblr though after a while.
Yeah.
And then it was I was like, I really felt that when I was trying to do a cover of a rap song on my ukulele. It was like, this was kind of cheesy. Yeah. But it was, I've always been like a dork, and I've always made jokes in like the classroom. Sometimes I couldn't help it though. It's just like, if I heard something and I knew it'd be funny if I said this specific thing, I had to blurt it out, and 9 times out of 10 that would get me in trouble. Yeah,
I was a little bit different. Like I would, like the way I was raised, like we would always like separate, like this is when we work hard and we're serious, and then this is when we're goofing off and have fun.
Yeah.
And you don't mix the two. So like I'm really on or off with everything, and because I was more of like a rule follower in school. Mm-hmm. Like I would definitely make the people that sat right next to me laugh during class, and like try to get them to get in trouble for laughing in class, but I would be calm.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't ever unless it was a big payoff, I wouldn't really blurt out anything in class unless it was something that was either going to be hilarious or not get me in trouble. Right. Something the teacher's going to laugh and then they can't get on to me. So if you can make the teacher laugh, you can get away with it.
I feel like that was like an unspoken rule that class clowns had to learn. It's just like, if you make the teacher laugh, you're scot-free. Especially if it's like visibly in front of everybody, that's like evidence. Like, he made you feel a certain way. You can't write him up. He got you to giggle.
Yeah, I remember I had one teacher that we could, me and my friend Nathan, we had a lot of classes together, and we'd sit next to each other, and like we were just trying to make each other laugh the whole time. And we had a history class, and we would always get the teacher off track on purpose, and just like, if you talk about the Razorbacks, he'll get off track and will not do anything about history that day. And then there's this girl in our class had a car wreck, and we we were ripping on her pretty hard one day because like she had like pictures of, it was like a Blazer, and she like went off the side of a hill and rolled and stuff, and she was claiming that she had her seatbelt on but went out the back glass somehow. So, and like she had pictures of like her seatbelt buckled, and we were freaking ripping on her like the whole time. She's like, the seat broke and the seatbelt didn't work, and I just went out the back glass. And I was like, your car was flipping sideways. How'd you go out the back glass? But like it got to a point where the teacher was getting in on it and was ripping on her. And I'm like, yes.
That always feels good whenever the teacher, like, it's part of the joke, like it adds on to it.
Yeah.
I had one. This is probably like the worst bit I've ever done in class. But it was a memorable one for sure. I got in trouble for it, so it had to be. We had a substitute teacher. I think it was world history, and he. It was the first time we had him, and I thought it'd be funny if I pretended to be a foreign exchange student.
Yeah.
So I started like having like this like really faux Asian accent, which was like a mix of 3 different Asian accents. And he just kind of went along with it. I could tell by the look in his eyes that he knew that this was fake, but it was a fun character bit. But like all my other classmates, they were like, "Oh wow, he's actually fooling the teacher." But I could tell looking at him, he's like, "Oh no, this guy knows how to be part of a scene thing."
Yeah.
And the only reason I got in trouble though was I kept cussing with the accent. I would get like a problem wrong, and I'll be like, "Oh fuck!" He was like, "Hey, don't cuss like that." And it was like. I was like, oh, sorry. And then, like, the next day, I had a in-school suspension for, like, 3 days. I was like, what? And I talked to him, like, dude, you were laughing the whole time. Like, yeah, but you're still cussing. I knew the whole time. I'm not going to let you get away with that.
Yeah, I almost got in trouble a couple of times, but I'm usually pretty good about getting away with stuff. But there was one day I brought a pit bike in for speech class to do, like, a demonstration on or some stupid thing. Mm-hmm. And when I was like, some of my friends were going out to help me load it back up into the back of my truck, and like we were pushing it down the hallway, and then right as like we were halfway down the hallway, I started up and rode it out like through the hallway. And while we were loading up, the principal comes out there, was like, were y'all riding that in the hallway? I was like, no, we were just pushing it. Like they were like, well, some teachers thought they heard it. I was like, no, we definitely started up outside. But
there's great acoustics down this hallway.
We started up out in the parking lot and rode it. But so I got away with that one. And then one day, like when I think I was 15 or 16, and I was probably 15, but I had a little like 92 Ford Ranger, a little tiny truck. Like my head touched the ceiling while I was driving this damn thing. Mm-hmm. And it was after football practice. I go outside, and some of the linemen decided that they were going to move my truck. Mm-hmm. And they just like picked up the back end of my truck and pushed it off into the grass. And they had just like put sod down at the school. Uh-huh. And, me being a dumbass, I probably could have backed up. I might have been able to like back up without getting stuck, but I just went forward and fucked up a bunch more sod than I had to. And then, but the principal was like super pissed. And, luckily one of the football coaches, he talked to the football coach first, and, I didn't mention neither one of them mentioned the part where the defensive lineman like picked it up and moved it, not me. And like I didn't just intentionally drive it through the damn field. So we left that part out, but he was, the football coach was like, all right, don't worry, I'll take care of it. I'll make him run for it or something. And, which was funny because, after like the principal came to the football practice afterwards and was making sure to talk to the coach to remind him. And then afterwards, after football practice, we go to run bleachers. But the funny thing was I did it on my own every day after football practice anyways. Okay. Like I'd run like 10 on my own. Yeah. And, he was like, all right, you got to do, the coach was like, all right, you got to do, like 15 bleachers. And I was like, all right, I'm going to do 25 because I always do 10. Right. And then he was like, no, you don't have to do that. I was like, I'm going to do it. And you fucking tell the principal that I did 25 just for fun.
Your punishments are nothing.
Yeah. Just a little slap in the face for him. It was like, you make sure you tell him that I did 25. But yeah, but I didn't really, get in trouble other than shit like that, maybe. But yeah, as far as like, what made you finally go to that first open mic?
What made me go to that first open mic? 2020 was a weird year. It was a rough year.
Which one was your first open mic?
Old Town.
Old Town. That's everybody's first one, except for like me. I started at Harry's.
It's a pretty good spot for. I mean, they're consistent with their open mic. They do it every week, and it's very heavily music orientated.
Right. Yeah.
They still let you do whatever you want to do. And
yeah.
That's, I was just looking for anywhere. You know how it was. Everywhere was shut down, so I was just Googling and Facebooking everywhere that had an open mic. Like, there has to be someplace. And Old Town popped up, and the bakery popped up, and there was a couple out of town places that popped up too. So it's just me just keeping track of all these scenes of like, all right, if I get the time, maybe I'll try to make it out here. But
yeah,
Old Town was the closest. It was the most available. And it was a fun first open mic. It was only like 5 people. 2 of them were staff.
Really?
And my first set was just a list of things you could call your butthole besides butthole.
I remember that bit when I wasn't there, but I definitely remember you doing that bit.
Yeah, I had it all. I tried it once at the Bakery District, which is a very different vibe from Old Town.
So how prepared were you for that first one? Like,
I was extremely prepared. I still had my notebook then.
How long do you think you were writing up to that point before you actually went to the first open mic?
Before I went to the first open mic? Maybe a month or 2. I've always been writing. For me is just kind of just it's obviously just jotting down your thoughts.
Yeah.
But I've always kind of had this mindset from a very young age of trying to find, the joke, how to especially be like, English is my second but only language.
Mm-hmm.
But what fascinated me about it is just the way, like, how the rules are set up and how it's set up so you could break down those rules.
Right.
And that's, comedy. That's poetry. It's just like you could and I just saw words as like these ingredients for a meal in a way.
Right.
But where am I going with this? I'm digressing so much. Okay, so I lied. My first open mic, or I guess my first mic, was in 3rd grade. I did a talent show.
I don't know if we're going to count that one, but okay.
I know, but it was a talent show, and I wanted to do stand-up comedy because my family. I think that's played a part of it, is my family just loving comedy and putting on comedy specials.
I think that's a big part of it. Like, if your parents were watching stand-up comedy when you were little. Yeah. That makes a big impact on you, because I definitely remember like watching HBO specials and stuff like that when I was a kid, and I would definitely go like repeat Dave Chappelle on the playground the next day, like 100%. But that so like that transition, did you have some like funny thoughts in your head and then kind of start writing them down, or like that because for me that's kind of how it like I've always been a fan of stand-up comedy. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until I actually started watching podcasts and hearing comedians talk about how scared they are and how horrible they were at first, to where like, maybe I could actually do this. Because it was never even, being a stand-up comedian was never even a thought to me. It was like, I was a fan of it, but I was like, I could never pull that off.
It never seemed like plausible even.
Yeah, I'm not like, I never talked into a microphone before I did stand-up comedy, and I've never really been an outgoing person or anything like that. But like when I'm around my uncles and my brothers and stuff, we're always roasting and having fun, and like definitely at work and stuff like that, when I get comfortable around people, we'd definitely start having fun. Yeah. But like when I started like hearing how terrified the like biggest comedians in the world were when they started, I was like, maybe I could do it. And then it was just kind of like, I would have some funny thoughts and be like, man, maybe I could turn that into a joke. And then I had that in my head for, probably months before I actually wrote it on paper. Mm-hmm. And then once I wrote it on paper,
it's a concrete joke.
I would kind of like, it wasn't even like full joke form or anything yet. I would just kind of write it down and just kind of come back to it until I had like 3 or 4 jokes. And I like a couple of them I just threw away because I was just like, there's no way I'm going to go say this on stage. Right. But and there's some that I've never even reapproached. But it was almost like a 2-year process from thinking of just like maybe I could do this like when I started listening to podcasts to actually writing it down and then actually getting the balls to actually go to an open mic. And part of it was because I didn't know of any comedy open mics around here until Harry's popped up. And that's what I was like, well, there's an open mic here to do it. And I've wrote some jokes, and I was terrified the first time I went down there. But I mean, as soon as they laughed on the first time on the first joke, which I still do that joke today. I did it last night, but I did the Ralphie Christmas story joke. It was the first joke I ever told on stage, and it was definitely rougher and not as good then, but I did it. And, as soon as it was we did it at the inn bar at Harry's at first. And that the bar was packed, and all the seating on to the left there was packed, and they were all real condensed in. It was like as soon as everybody laughed all at once, I was like, "Oh, I'm hooked." And I mean, I've been doing it consistently ever since. So, but yeah, it was part of it was like my body starting to fail, and getting out of all these I was racing motocross for 27 years. And then I started getting injured almost every time I rode or something like that. It got to a point where I was in so much pain, I would ride once and have to take 2 or 3 weeks off because something's hurting. And then I started getting more and more injuries, just super easy. And I was end up having to get out of all those hobbies. And I was like, all right, I got to fill this with something. Yeah. But I definitely, and that's kind of how I found comedy. One thing is, I don't think I ever would have done it if I was still at a really high stress job, because I was a service advisor at a car dealership, which is 6 days a week, every other week, working 7 to 6, if not longer. If you count the meetings and all the other bullshit, it's way more hours. Yeah. And then on top of that, I had a part-time job of, buffing floors, which I do full-time now. But I was just so stressed out back then, just trying to make money and keep up with everything, that I don't think I would have ever done comedy. It shuts off your creativity when you're going that fast and just trying to make money, and
when you're in that mindset of just work and then rest and work.
Yeah, I don't think you could have a job where you're working 70 hours a week and then be a painter or do poetry and stuff. It's your creativity just shuts down when you're that stressed out all the time or that busy. It seems like once I went to only having one job and only working 40, 50 hours a week, that's when my creative side started kicking back in. I was that's when I started writing and thinking of jokes and stuff like that.
I saw this interview with Matt Stone and Trey Parker. I've been really obsessed with, I've been looking up comedy adjacent people for interviews, how they develop their comedy. And the South Park guys. I just love their sense of comedy because it's just for them. It's just for them.
Yeah.
And
it started as a joke, the Christmas card thing. That's so freaking.
Yeah. That's insane. Word of mouth, passing around this bootleg tape. That's just. Anyway, they said that after the Team America movie, their goal was it either that or the Book of Mormon? But either way, they said that after a big project like that, people always ask them oh, what's your next thing that you want to do? It's get bored. Yeah, I want to get bored because they've been busy, and then
they do wild parties and then that documentary about how they wait till the last minute to do an episode and do it in less than a week.
Yeah, 6 days.
Yeah, that is so wild.
Last minute stuff. I drew inspiration from that. I did a roast in Tulsa, and I thought of some jokes 2 or 3 days beforehand, but I wasn't really thinking about it too hard. And I just went on this driving trip to Texas, saw some family. That was 3.5 hours, and then 3 more hours to Tulsa. And I was just driving and thinking of jokes, and it was pretty good. I won both rounds.
And they're predicting the future on all kinds of shit. Last week, some guys in New Zealand got busted smuggling KFC across the border. And there's definitely an episode where Cartman is black market selling KFC chicken.
Oh, I remember that.
That is. That's what when that news article come out, everybody's this is a South Park episode.
and in the interview I saw, they were talking about like how they come up with ideas and making sure that they stay fresh and not too repetitive. And like there was a point before in the early days, but they were make something. It was like, oh, Family Guy or The Simpsons did this bit, and then at this point in time, I can't remember how recent this interview was, but they said, oh, nowadays whenever we think of an idea, it's like, oh wait, no, those shows did it, but they took it from us, or oh no, we already did this concept way back when.
Yeah.
And so that's
When
that's
they've
always
been going
interesting.
on for as long as they have, like that's, I mean, yeah, they have to come back to ideas sometimes too. But I mean, I'm pretty excited about they just got like a huge contract, bought Casa Bonita, and
Oh, I saw something about that.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
so they bought that restaurant from the episode, and they just signed. I think they get like their 14-hour long movie deals. So I think South Park's going to like hour-long episodes now.
Ooh.
But I think they also got some movie deals to do too.
Okay.
So who knows what's coming out of those guys in the next few years?
They have so much talent, and just the way they process everything, and they have this weird ability to not only subvert your expectations, but they also subvert those expectations of that subversion. They just keep flipping it. It's like, no, we don't want you to know. I see their comedy as like they want to. It's like this magic trick to them. It's like each joke just disappears, and then they gotta reinstate it somehow. As oh man, I got confused with this analogy. It's like all right, here's the subject matter, right?
Yeah.
Whoosh. This is the actual subject matter. You're being distracted by this, but this is
Yeah.
actually what it is. And I feel like that's how they do their comedy. Is they just want to surprise people.
Yeah. So you did that first open mic, and from there, like how much material do you think you had right off the bat?
Right off the bat, from that first, like before that first open mic, or like around that time period,
Or like around that time period there?
I would say usable content, maybe. The actual funny content, I would say 3 to 4 minutes solid.
Yeah.
I had a lot.
But you have that personality and stage presence where you can get up there and bullshit for a while and stretch it if you need to. So you could definitely take that third. Like, I can't do that. Like, if I spend any extra time on stage or in between, like last night I riffed a little bit and it was okay. But I feel like sometimes if I'm up there and I'm saying shit that's not on script or something, like something's gonna go bad.
Yeah.
And I've talked to you like right before the open mic where you're like, I don't know what jokes I'm gonna do yet. I usually have mine planned out at least 2 or 3 days in advance before I'm gonna do this one this week.
Yeah.
And I've very seldom do I make a last minute audible. Like I think at the Majestic last week at the comedy competition, I decided to throw in an extra minute at the beginning.
Okay. But
That's about as far. Like they were like, we were supposed to do 5-minute sets, and then they were like, we don't have that many people here. There's only like 10 comics or whatever. So just if you go over a little bit, that's fine. I was like, all right, I'll add a minute or two.
Okay.
But as far as haven't really made any last minute audibles or anything like that. I'm just like, I'm going to do this joke and they're either going to like it or not. And I definitely should. There's been a few times which at an open mic, it's hard to know the crowd. But I think last week, or the week before at the Grove, when I was there, I was like, man, I needed some more middle-aged married people in the crowd for my jokes to hit a little harder. When it was like all younger, like early 20-year-olds, they were like, oh, these don't hit as hard with them, but like they get every other one or whatever. But yeah, I was like, damn, I'm definitely doing jokes to people that's at least had a divorce or been married or
Yeah, subject matter is for sure a weird thing to consider when doing comedy, because subject matter is so. Not everybody can understand it because it's relative to the people who actually experience it.
like that freaking night when the crowd was just all like 60-year-old people, and then Blake breaks out his old people jokes, and you're like, it couldn't be more perfect than this right here, because like
he banked on the fact the crowd really wanted to be part of the show, and he let them be part of the show, albeit in his own sense. But that was probably top 3 Blake performances that I enjoyed.
Yeah, and like the crowd, it couldn't have worked out more perfect with the amount of old people in the crowd with the material that he was doing was like, that was perfect.
Knowing Blake's comedy inspirations and his comedy style, I think that was the version of him that he truly wanted to be on that stage. And
yeah,
he's still working at that, because they'll do those jokes and sometimes they hit or miss,
yeah,
especially with the crowd. But he still enjoys that. He was like, all right. He recognizes it as like he's not there yet, but he's still very consistent in who he wants to be as a comedian.
Yeah.
So I respect that about Blake's comedic self, sense of identity. And I think I try to draw from that too.
Yeah. One thing, so I had a conversation on, well, not really a conversation, but there's a comedian that I don't really know that I follow on Facebook, and he posts stuff like every day, and it's more of like a page than just like a personal, like he treats it more like that. But he has like on this day in comedy, and then like and always asks these questions. But one day, like I guess it was last week, he asked, is it okay to call yourself a comedian if it's not your main job, if it's not your main source of income? And okay. I commented on there that it's okay to call yourself a comedian if it's not your main source of income. But when it is your main source of income, you can put professional comedian in front of that.
Of course.
And yeah, a lot of people agreed with me, and I think it's like that in everything, because I've been involved in a lot of sports, and it's the same way. Like, you can get to a local professional motocross level and make money at it, but it's not actually your job. It's not, you're not going to pay any bills with it, but you're getting paid. And that's kind of where we're all right now. But when those guys aren't real professionals. Like the real professionals are making, it's their main source of income, and they're making a living off of it. And it's like that. I mean, really, like, college athletes they're almost better. Like, college football players are almost better than NFL players in some situations like that. The ones that are going to go on to the NFL are probably almost as good in the college as they are in NFL. As a matter of fact, a lot of them get slower as they're in the NFL. Like, their performance numbers go down the longer they're in the NFL. Yeah. And it's the same thing. It's like, until you're paying your bills, you can't really call yourself a professional or a professional comedian. But that transition I've been involved in MMA and stuff like that for like 14 years now. And it's really similar, that transition that fighters make to being a professional, to like comedians make to being a professional. And that transition is like, I see, like, you're like right now, like we're going to have a full-time job, and we're going to, make money on the side being a stand-up comedian. Fighters are the same way. Like, have a full-time job. They got to freaking train every night. And then, once every couple of months, they'll go have a fight and make some money. And you have to be progressing to being a professional. And during that same time, and to make that transition to where you're making enough, like, you're edging closer to being the professional the whole time. And as you're getting to make that leap is a real tough one in almost every sport, especially like between fighting and comedy like that. So you got to get to where you're making enough money while you have a full-time job, and then jump to going, I'm a full-time comedian now, I'm paying my bills this way, or I'm a full-time fighter. And once you make that leap, I feel like it's sink or swim. You're either going to make it or not. Like, and I think you automatically get better when you go, all right, I'm a full-time comedian now, and I have more time to write jokes and like you don't have to worry about your job anymore or anything like that. Same thing with fighting. Like I have more time to train. I don't have to worry about going to some bullshit job, and then I can train more, and just my whole life is about this one thing now. But like when I'm thinking about how I'm going to transition to that in, 5, 6, 7 years, whatever, when I'm trying to get to that transition point, I'm like, man, how much it's like, hopefully I will get better, even better than I have been getting over the past few years. Like I'm hoping I can make a jump there once it goes professional.
I agree with everything you said about, putting your all into it, and it's sink or swim. It truly is.
Yeah.
It's because. So, I want to go back to that comedian. I don't know who the comedian is. I don't know how long they've been doing comedy, but I love the fact that he asked that on a public platform.
Yeah.
Can you call yourself a comedian? Because to me, that
honestly, I think he was just stirring up shit, but yeah.
Possibly. There could be some things he's letting off his chest, but to me, personally, in my opinion, that question, there's so much to that, especially when you're putting it on something like Facebook. Not only is he in a position in comedy where he's pondering how to develop his skill further and maintain it further, i.e. with, monetary funds or connections or opportunities. But like asking that also is a way to not only interact with the audience, but in a sense to find vindication, because asking that shows he doesn't see comedy as this simple, just go up behind the mic, talk shit. He sees it as a legit art, and he craves it to be this profession. He wants to be a comedian.
So there was, I think it was Chloe LeBranch was on a podcast the other day, and she was like, yeah, I was dating this guy, and he's like, I think it's great that you have a hobby. And she was like, this is my job, you fucking idiot, not a hobby. And that's what I try to get my wife to understand too. I was like, no, I'm trying to make this my main source of income. This isn't just me goofing around. And when, you start bringing home money on the weekends and stuff like that, we're like, hey, I just talked for 20 minutes and made, $50, $100 or whatever here and there. And just, and she's like, oh, okay. I see what you're doing now. It's not just, and I've never got this big a return, I've made more money doing stand-up than I ever did, like training people and fighting and stuff like that, or training motocrossers and stuff. I was like, I've never, I was like, I've been able to make more money standing up talking into a microphone than doing that shit. And like training people is fucking hard.
Yeah. But I don't know. It's just people admire abilities and skills that they don't necessarily have, or it's something that they have but they haven't, they can't possibly develop further. It's like comedy is like sports. Any skill that you develop is like sports. If you people, that we've always looked up to gods and heroes, and these big strong people, people want to watch what the people's maximum potential. That's why we have the Olympics. It's like, oh, these people are so good at this thing. I never imagined I could see someone who looks like me, in this shape, be able to do that.
That's what, and I was thinking about this last night, like how cool it is that we have a group of comedians here that we just kind of built. And I was like, I don't know how much I would be doing stand up or how focused I would be on it if I didn't have this group of guys and people around that are getting better with me. We're hanging out and making it fun, and like we're all growing together, and it's pretty cool. And I was on my way home last night, I was like, man, if it was just me going to open mics by myself. And not knowing people there, and just coming right back home, it would suck. And it's cool to think, I was like, and we're all pretty similar focus. Like we're all like hey, we're all going to make this a job someday. This is going to be our main source of income, and we're all working towards that.
Yeah.
And we're doing it together. I was like, it's pretty cool how we're doing it with River Valley Comics.
Mm-hmm.
And like thanks for, Chase and Sam for keeping it going.
Oh yeah.
Because I've tried to do, I tried to do one show, and it was okay. It went good and everything, but I'm not the people person like Sam and Chase to go out there and make all these connections with all these promoters and do that stuff. And they're the ones going out there and doing all that shit and making connections all over the place. And it's helping the group out a lot.
For sure.
But it's going to be cool. Like one day, like to see where we're all at and, 5 years from now.
Just to compare that.
Yeah. And I get that, like, we're all like, eventually we're all going to go in somewhat separate directions because everybody's like, we're all doing our own genre of comedy.
It's going to attract a certain kind of following, and it's not going to be necessarily the same area, the same direction, but it's still, at its core, we're still trying to be funny. Yeah.
Like it's weird. Like the Grove is a good place to where you see this, like you'll see like Seth will do great up there, and he's doing a different kind of comedy than me, and like I'll still do good up there, but I do pretty good in bars where the people are freaking like a little more rowdy, and like they appreciate the dirtier jokes, and they've probably been married and divorced and all this stuff, and like it resonates with them a little bit better.
Yeah.
And then Chase and Sam and them can go do some clean comedy here and there. Not like I'm working on the ability to do clean comedy because that's where the money is. Yeah. But it also bugs the shit out of me because like I feel like I have to tame, like, I don't know. It's way harder to write a clean joke for me because one, I don't think it's as funny. Like I could, but I'm working on it. And working on trying to have these jokes that have, more mass appeal.
The way I see clean jokes is it would make a different version of me laugh. Like a past version of me, like a younger me who used to love puns and all that. And I still love puns, and that they actually do make me laugh. But there's some jokes that I'm like, this I enjoy this joke, but there's more people who enjoy this joke than me.
They almost all seem too simple for me when you do a joke on something that's like shit. I did like
if it's like basics, so hey, I was on the airplane the other day.
When I did the open mic at OKC, and they were playing like previews before the show started. One of them was Brian Regan doing a freaking bit on Happy Meal toys. And it was not fucking funny at all. And
I don't know. So
I've never really watched his stand up. I know he's the, super clean, mass, huge comedian. And I was just like, this shit was not funny at all. And it seems like something that anybody could come up with. The originality on the I'm having a hard time being original and writing clean jokes. I do have, I have the one now about my grandma having 17 kids, which it doesn't get much more original than that because there's not a lot of people their grandma's walking around having 17 kids. So
I think originality is just, I feel like everything I'm going to say has been said before. That's how a lot of things are in a way.
Yeah.
So originality is just, I believe, just not that there's that term putting your own spin into it, but we recognize the joke structure. We recognize how jokes work, and there's certain ways that they work best. Like, oh, guess what you think is this? Bam, it's this. Or how puns work, how a callback works.
Yeah.
And then we just insert our experience in there. And it sucks, but once you understand comedy is just like those ad lib books. It's like, oh, there's this blank and blank 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 and blank 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 blank, and then you make it funny the way you want it to be funny.
That's the problem too. Is like sometimes being fucking hack kills. Like you'll see someone doing some bullshit jokes that you've heard 100 times, and you're in the crowd just dying, and you're like, I mean, it's fucking working, but I mean,
it makes me mad sometimes when I laugh at it too. It's like I know how that joke works. It's just like it's like that's a little too pretentious to say, but it's kind of like Penn and Teller, like watching other magicians. Like, whoa, wow, that's really good, but also
Yeah,
I could
know
get
how
the
you did
gist
that,
of
yeah.
how you're gonna do that. So I think it's just this disillusionment of comedy that you kind of have to go through. It's like, oh, I think everyone's like laughed at the same thing before.
yeah,
There's I think one of my biggest comedy influences is probably my grandpa. He had like a bunch of these cheesy dad jokes and one-liners. And he told me this I would always ask him for the joke again, and he told me, I will never forget this, it's bad luck to say the same joke twice. And for some reason that always stuck with me.
yeah,
But I still said, you know, I understand that. Like, oh, it's not really bad luck. It's just at this point you're just getting bored with saying the same thing
yeah,
or hearing the same thing over and over.
yeah,
Especially when it comes out of your mouth.
Yeah.
It's like, this is kind of disappointing. I feel like I want it to be original, I want it to be creative, and you still are, but it's things are more simple than they seem to be.
yeah.
They can be also complicated, but anyway, I'm digressing. I wanted to talk about this. This is my favorite joke from my grandpa. There's this gentleman, right? He wanted to start a farm, and he was just missing chickens. He didn't have any chickens to start off with, so he went down to the farmers market and asked this merchant, "Hey, I want to start a chicken farm. I was wondering if you could buy me a hen." Like, yeah, we could. I could sell you a hen. We don't call them hens here, though. We call them pullets. Like, all right, I'll buy one pullet. So he has one in the cage. He was like, well, I need to make sure they can breed, so I need to buy me a rooster. It's like, all right, we do call them cocks, though, just letting you know. It's like, yes, sir, I'll buy one cock. That's fine. And so he has both of them, but he still needs a wagon because he has some other supplies he has to pick up. So he buys a wagon, and he asks for a donkey to pull it. Yes, sir, I have a donkey. Just know it's called an ass. Also, if it stops for any reason, just give it a smack, and it's going to keep going. Just letting you know. Like, all right, cool. So he loads up his animals. He has his wagon. He's going along the road. And he sees this little old lady. And she looks tired and a little dehydrated. And he wants to help. He's a kind-hearted soul. Ma'am, would you like to hop on my wagon? I could give you a ride anywhere you'd like. He's like, well, you're a kind young man. I think I'll take you up on that offer. So she's riding in the wagon with him. Everything's going smooth. And all of a sudden, the ass stops. And the chickens, they're both going crazy. And he's trying to make sure that the wagon's going, but the chickens are maintained. So he goes to the old lady, needed help. Ma'am, I hope I'm not bothering you, but I need you to hold my cock and pull it while I go smack my ass.
Yeah. I knew we were getting there.
Yeah, it was so obvious, especially with the build up. But you know, at that point in time, I was like, where is he going? Why are he saying these silly words? And then just the way it just comes together at the end.
Yeah.
It's just, it always puts a smile on my
So
face.
now that we've kind of got to know your introduction into comedy and stuff a little bit, you wanted to talk about something last night, and we were planning on doing the podcast, and we saved it for the podcast. What were you were kind of getting into it, talking about your little brother?
It's like my little brother. His name's Jonathan Schaefer. I have 3 little brothers. They
Right.
all have a different biological father. They're all half white, but they're still my brothers. I still love them to death.
Yeah.
But
A little less because they're half white.
the half breeds. The bloodline was so pure.
Yeah.
But they've been raised in America for most of their life.
Yeah.
And I was raised in America for most of my life as well. But I was raised in South Korea for about till I was 8 or 9. What's weird for me is that my little brother, Jonathan, he was also born in South Korea, but he moved. He was like 2 or 3 when we moved.
Yeah.
So not as many memories. But he joined a Filipino club recently at UFIS, where they have different cultural clubs. And I love cultural clubs. I used to live in Southern California, and went to a high school that had cultural clubs, and they had a cultural like little festival in the gym, and I think it's fantastic. Ooh, that implies a butt. What is my butt? I had a thing about this.
So, yeah.
It's how I love cultural clubs, but my concern is how they're being utilized.
It is. So in I mean, that you hear all kinds of wild stuff in colleges now, how they're having, separate graduations and stuff like there's like the white kids will walk on one graduation, like all the people of color will graduate on, like they'll have a different walk
Really?
for graduate. There's some colleges that have been doing weird stuff like that. And, yeah, it is good to have these cultural classes, but just because you have that same culture doesn't mean they're going to be all into the same thing. So like it's traditionally, I mean, and we'd have clubs by, the interest of your hobby and not the color of your skin or your race, especially these days when like a lot of people are like, I mean, especially my family being so diverse and everything, but like you might identify as being Hispanic or Hispanic or something, but you're only actually like a quarter Hispanic.
Right.
And
which is fine. It's like, if you feel pride in that aspect of yourself. I always see race as just another physical quality of yourself. Like,
right.
If like you had a big nose, if you had a different body shape, this just happens to be what I look like. This just happens to be the genetics I was born with. My thing is like my brother, by the way, I love that he's in the cultural club because it's inspiring him to look into the culture a little more.
Yeah.
He bought Filipino books,
right.
the Latinos of Asia. I only read like the back of it, but I'm glad he's taking interest in this part of himself.
That's where I was kind of wondering too, is like, where do you draw the line? Because all cultures are influenced by each other. So like if you're talking about Filipino culture, are you talking about traditional Filipino culture pre-Spanish?
There's so many iterations of that culture because it's been changed and adapted and assimilated so fast.
Yeah, I mean, like Latinos are big on that too. But I mean, you're speaking Spanish. You're Native American speaking. I mean, that's how I am too. But I mean, I'm both Spanish and Mexican. But like, it's like, we're speaking Spanish for a freaking reason,
The thing about so I love cultural clubs for the fact that they're learning more about the culture and sharing that culture with people. But there's a small part of it, just a very small part that I feel like it's also like, hey, isn't it cool that I'm this? It was like kind of, but it's not that big of a deal because we're all here in this vicinity. We're all under the same conditions. We just came from different origins,
right?
And I have pride in that. Oh, show love for it. But I hope it's not his sole focus. Like I said, like I'm glad he's proud of that.
Yeah, I mean, as long as they're not, hunting down white kids or something, I don't see any problem with it, or hunting down any other races or anything. But I think it is good to hold on a little bit of your heritage and stuff. Like I definitely do that a little bit, because the only heritage that I've known, and I think it's going to get to this point with most people, anyways. But like. White people do the thing where like I'm Irish, I'm Italian, and the chances are they're probably small amounts of any of those things. Because I mean, even if your family came from Italy, they might be who knows what, because there's been trade routes and all that through there. I mean, your genetics are probably not. Even if you come from Italy, you're probably not 100% Italian. If you made it all the way to the United States, there's probably some intermingling that went on, and I think a lot of white people have lost most of their heritage because they're so mixed and they hold on to like one part of it. Like I'm Italian, I'm Irish, whatever, and I think it's eventually going to get like that where everybody's like, you might be holding on to one or two, but you're so mixed that it doesn't even matter anymore. Right. And I think ultimately that's probably a good thing. And I definitely think it's hilarious that, like with all these DNA tests and stuff, like there's been people coming like, all these white supremacists finding out that they're like 2% black and shit like that. And you're like, there's definitely been some funny shit happen with all that going on, and it's really blurred the lines. And like I said too, like where do you draw the lines on your heritage when Like, because I found out, like, so I did my DNA test, and one thing I did was I was trying to find the main reason I did it is because me and my little brother, my grandpa was adopted, and we were both trying to figure out what our actual last name would be. And I haven't been, because he was adopted, I found a couple genetic matches on his side, but didn't really get anywhere as far as figuring out who his actual biological parents were, and or what his actual last name was. But I forgot where I was going with that.
I don't remember either. But I want to think. Another side of that is I think part of me is a little envious that my brother at such a young age has a solid community for his heritage.
Right. Yeah.
I've had bits and pieces of that, but I've always felt a little estranged from other Filipino
It does suck when you search that out and nobody can give you any information. So, yeah, you definitely learn from other people like that. Oh, I know where I was getting. So, like, I was definitely. So, like, I was doing that DNA test and looking back at my ancestors and stuff like that, and I found like 2 of my great grandparents fought for the Confederacy, and then on the other side of the family, I was trying to figure out, like, I'm like 2% Nigerian, which means like one of my fifth great grandparents was black. And I figured it out. It's on my mom's side, and of course, it's horrible. But if you think about it, so I knew I always thought I was Spanish. It turns out it's more Portuguese than Spanish, apparently. But of course, the Portuguese settled South America. So I have my 5th great grandparents come from Brazil, and I guess one's Portuguese and one's black, and they moved to Mexico. So it's like, I've got this, like, one side's Confederate Army, one side probably a former slave, and then my, Hispanic side, they're all, most of my family was in New Mexico before it became a state, before it became part of the United States. So it's like, it's such a weird balance of genetics and stuff that make up, and you're like
clashing cultures at first glance.
Yeah, and like eventually we all mix, and here I am, So it's like, and there's all kinds of, like, one thing you learn is, like, you're just here by freaking chance too, because one of my my great grandma's brother, like, died in the Bataan Death March in fucking Japan.
Oh wow!
And like, or not in Japan, but like World War II and shit. Like, it's freaking horrible shit. Like, and you're like, man, I could have accidentally, like, the ones that my first relatives that came here from Brazil to Mexico, where the guy was 35 and the girl was 13. Yeah, and their first kid, they had like 5 kids that didn't make it, but the first one that they had, the oldest one, was the one that did.
Oh man, that's brutal.
Was he off in his siblings, or what the fuck was going on here?
I get the best Christmases. I'm not sharing my presents.
Yeah, but you're like, oh man, most of your when you start doing those tests, you're like, man, most of my relatives didn't live till past 50. Right. It's kind of a weird situation.
It's understanding your heritage is for sure a necessity to understand, not understand yourself better, of course. I think that's the line, is using heritage to understand you and where you come from, and to maybe relate to someone with similar origins.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's something that's meant to be paraded around.
Yeah.
There's pride, and then there's parades. I think I love parades.
Yeah.
But what am I getting at?
So
I love a Filipino parade now that I think about it.
But one thing, like, I'm sure you get this a lot more than I did growing up, but because I am mostly white, but like, I would, like, when I was growing up, I was way darker than all the other kids in my class, especially, like, I'm not very dark right now, but I definitely looked more Hispanic when I was younger. And like, every once in a while I'd get questions like some white kid would be like, hey, what are you? And I'm like, well, I'm Spanish. And they'd be like, well, so you're Mexican? And I'm like, nope, not exactly. But they would get so confused. It's like, what Spain is like, and you'd have to explain the whole damn thing to them. But so I would get it that way. And then I remember one time specifically, there was a girl that was, I went to school with a lot of religious kids, and I was a library aide, and I was in the library one day, and this girl who, like, it wasn't a girl that I was trying to date or anything, but she just volunteered the information that she was like, she said, "Oh, you're Catholic." And I was like, "Yeah." And she's like, "My dad would never let me date you." I was like, well, I wasn't asking for one, but that's kind of fucked up.
Well, that's just like, oh, hey, I found one of them, Dad.
Yeah. Cause that was like, it was me and one other guy that was Catholic at my school. So it was definitely weird to people.
I totally get that. I've been like the only Filipino dude in like half the schools I've been to. So I've always, they always ask what I am. And I feel like a lot of people, a lot of ethnicities have can relate to that question. Like, what are you?
Yeah, there was, so on my basketball team in junior high, there was me, who's mostly Spanish or whatever, Portuguese, and then there was another guy who was Native American, and then another guy who was Hawaiian, and everybody assumed we were brothers. It was like you would talk to parents after the game, and they would just assume that the three slightly darker kids are all like the ones with the same complexion are all brothers, or how the hell else would they be? It was weird.
There was when I was in California, there was like a upperclassman. We looked kind of similar. We were both like portly Asian dudes, and I think he was part Filipino. But there was a guy who walked up. He was like, "Hey, y'all look exactly alike." And then we looked at each other, kind of with that look, like, "Oh, of course." But then I made a joke with like, "Us look alike." I mean, I know we're both handsome, but I don't think we look alike.
Yeah.
But he was like, "All right, dope." I love racial ambiguity because I love just. I love race mixing. I'm so for it because you get such a combination of cultures within this one receptacle. There's like all this history of one culture and then another, and then when it's just combined, it's just a richer and more complex and more varied person. I believe when you get to experience other beliefs, mindsets, and all that, and it just I heard studies that at some point we were just all gonna look like Brazilians with like blue eyes or something like that, and I think this is that weird intermediary.
That'd be my little brother.
This is that weird intermediary period where it's like, all right, we're in the process of just kind of melding everything. It's like, all right, we're gonna at some point we're all gonna come together, go out into space, and then we're just gonna start I think aliens. It's gonna be great.
I think like how you were saying you were concerned of where they're going with all this stuff, like with CRT and all this stuff, is like they're really teaching people to hold on to how they look and not their heritage, because there's definitely there was African American Native Americans that were 100% part of the tribe that they just got. So what culture does that guy or descendants of that guy hold on to, and it's he has the Native American heritage but looks a different way. So the way that they're wanting people to identify by the way that they look, and then the way that their look is just getting completely more diverse over the years, it's pretty weird how they're pushing that in colleges and stuff like that, like you said with your brother being in that group, which I think that one's, it sounds harmless.
Oh yeah, they're fun little clubs. If I were to have any kind of concern at all, is this sense, like an overt sense of pride over your race being in a club. I don't think that's the case. It is, they're all like freshmen to sophomore in college. Yeah, it's just a way for them to really connect. Like he's also in a frat with some other dudes,
and it's almost like being racist these days is almost unnatural. Like it definitely has to be taught, especially so I live in Fort Smith. I've got little kids, and if you just don't ever say anything about race to your kids, it'll be fine. There's the school that they go to, just by guessing, it's probably about like, I would say about 50% white kids. And then the other 50% is just a mix of black, just all the people of color basically.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I have, all my daughter's friends just happen to be black. So, I mean, I have little black girls staying at my house all the time, 10-year-olds. And it's been that way since she was little. And it's like, they don't know any difference if you don't teach them.
No, it's just, there's these people.
There's been a few times where like my daughter will say something like, hey, that could be taken the wrong way. Like you have to explain it to them. Like, hey, like what you said was a little off-putting to them. Like you need to, like, it's not bad. It's just different. Like it's like, so
they just need to understand what some of the things they say may reflect on certain past thoughts and beliefs and actions.
But that happens on different levels too. It's not just race when it's like, I mean, people are rude. I mean, like, my mom's the fucking worst one in the world. Be like, hey, have you gained weight? Like, the first thing she fucking says to me, or like, she literally walked in my house one day and was like, hey, you're going bald. And I was like, you didn't even say hi to me first. You just came in here and was like, hey, you're going bald. And like, my mom is definitely that person that does that shit. But that Coleman Hughes is big on that. Like, he preaches the case for colorblindness. And, that's basically the thing is like, if you just, it's the thing is don't self-segregate is the big deal. Yeah. And that's what colleges and stuff are doing now is it's like they're choosing to associate with their own race just on the way they look instead of people that they're interested in being around for hobbies or interest or whatever. And that self-segregation is more damaging than anything. Cause like you can almost, I mean, what is it? Daryl Hughes, the guy that has that Netflix, it's Daryl something has
D.L. Huey?
No. This guy has a Netflix documentary and he's like turned a bunch of KKK members, like got them to quit the KKK. It's an older black guy that, I think he plays the piano and he's a professional but he would like go meet people from the KKK and eventually just have a conversation. And he would usually start by, why do you hate me? And then when they realized that dude's way smarter than them, for one, and just talk circles around them, that they didn't have any reason to actually hate anybody. So it's really just not interacting with other races that causes the big problem.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
well, I think that's a part of it for sure. But I think there's always going to be this weird aspect of, because people will envy over every little thing. So people like to find a reason, like, for why someone's doing better than them. It's like,
right.
They have to be doing because of this one aspect, this one specific aspect. It's like, no, there's probably multiple levels, but you want to stick to the shallow aspect of it because it's more reassuring and you don't have to look any deeper. But that's not for everybody. I'm just the only concern I have with my little brother being proud he's Filipino is that he won't be able to change his race with any plastic surgery. I just want people to be whatever race they want.
Going to be Korean.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. So there's so many spectrums to this because like, I love people being proud and accepting of all races. Putting another race on a pedestal to the point where you change your whole physical identity to be that race. That's I think that's what the slippery slope is. That's an outlier, of course, and not everyone agrees with that. But that's still present in the world.
Yeah,
I doubt everyone's going to be getting surgery to look like whatever race they want.
Right.
But I hope it's more just appreciating each other's cultures.
Yeah, and that's one thing that sucks. Like for black people, like in the United States, you're just black, and and African Americans are like the most diverse people as far as a race goes. Like it's like if you go to Africa, like one country, like someone from the Congo and Nigeria are like completely different characteristics. Like just like we put Asians in one box, and there's multiple different Asians, and most people. If you pay attention to other cultures and stuff, you can tell Asians slightly apart from each other. And you could do that with African American people too. If we learned about each culture they have and not just put them in one big box of being black.
That's a big thing too. It's just it's accuracy and making sure you clear up any ignorance. Like when kids walk up and ask like, "Oh, what are you?" It's just abrupt ignorance. It's nothing. I don't think there's any bad intention. It's like, "Oh, I just don't know." But it's just phrased in a way that's very, it's very, demanding. It's like, "What are you?" I'm just so confused. It's like, you don't need to know, but just being considerate involves doing research. That's it.
Yeah.
That's
well, and you got to realize
you don't
too
have
that
to research every single race. That'd be a lot, but
but how you interact with people when they ask that question can make a difference too. Because I met a Filipino guy and he was a fucking asshole.
Bill Burr had like a perfect bit about that. It's like white people can't get away with it because of where they put the word "fucking."
Yeah.
It's like black people say this Asian motherfucker, while white people are like this motherfucking Asian.
Yeah.
It's like you said the same thing. It's just how you come off it. It's your delivery.
Yeah, but I mean, as like the person being asked that question, it's, it's. I think you can kill them with kindness, and just you got to realize that's one thing that I've been big on. Like when I talk to people is. Like it's almost like it's people can't help the way that they think, like the way they were brought up, what they interacted, it like the reason they think that is like you can't be mad at them for how they think. You can only approach them in a way to be like, hey, have you considered this and this, and kind of maybe widen the variables, give them a little more variables to calculate into why they're coming to that decision. And like their environment, their parents, everything like is calculated into why they think what they think. And it's like,
this is so funny.
People just live in those gray in the gray areas, but then they try to make everything black and white.
I was just having this conversation last night about the concept of free will, because the way you think is shaped by your environment and everything before that point, and how not only how your parents got there, but how your parents got there. It keeps leading back to this this one event. If we were able to, we could trace everything back. But
the free will comes in when you know those things and you ignore them just to be an asshole.
Free will exists, but not everybody has that. Because free will is understanding that you could think contradictory thoughts, and it's based on your actions on those thoughts that really defines who you are. Yeah,
and like the case can be made in almost every situation. Like if you take any political point of view and just draw the lines, everything looks so damn far away. Like almost you can do abortion, gun debate, everything. Like one side is over here and one side is over here, and the media will only put the extreme contrast in the media. But then when you start adding in all these other variables and stuff like that, everything starts coming back to the middle, and it's never done. And one book that really does it for everybody, which Thomas Sowell has a book called Black Redneck, White Liberal. And it really gets into the basically the Southern, he talks about the Southern black culture and how it is really just a derivative of rural culture in Europe. So most of the people that didn't have as much money and lived outside of the cities in England and in the surrounding countries, like if you lived outside of a big country, they were kind of like rednecks, like like we consider now here in the South, or living in rural areas. Yeah. So those people settled the South, and they were, and that is basically where Southern black culture comes from. And but it's a really interesting book because you don't realize how close, the Southern black culture and rednecks have in common. And that book kind of brings it into detail where they are pretty much the same culture. And they they value the same things. It's just like they're completely different, but they're almost the same. It's pretty cool, that book, how it brings everything together, and you don't realize how things came to be.
Yeah.
And that book is awesome for it, and the stats that he puts in there and stuff like that are kind of hard to digest for people that don't want to hear it, because like if you've been, saying that, you're oppressed for these and these reasons and all this stuff, it really brings it back to the middle. Like, you're not wrong for believing that, but it's not as bad as you think. That's
events. I see events in like the human timeline as like these wavelengths. It's like, everything's ups and downs, of course, but if you could see it, everything swings, back and forth.
Right.
There's this weird balance. So yes, there's a thing that happened, but there's a thing that happened before that triggered that thing, and then it keeps going back. And it's always going to be like, people have control of their actions, of course, but the way things come about. Oh no, I lost it. I had it. I had it. It was there.
But yeah, it's like when people are like, if you're dealing with a customer that is just completely irate and just not being reasonable at all, like if you just talk to them a little bit, you find out like, somebody they love just died or something bad happened to them, and they're not even mad at you over anything or the whole situation you're in. They're just lashing out over, whatever. And like, if you just sympathize with people when they're being erratic and stuff like that, you can really calm people down. And that's the case a lot of times. It's like they will, and you see all these videos of people freaking out on planes and in restaurants and stuff like that, and you're like, they're just wound so tight. It's not even the situation that they're in is why they're overreacting. It's their whole life and shit that's been going on, and then just one little trigger, no matter how small it seems, can just, kick it off.
There's just so much information now to process. At some point, it's going to break down, and it just so happens that it's in a public space.
Yeah.
People can't really control what they feel or think, because it's a product of their environment and the people they're around. There is everything has a relative right and wrong thing to go about it, of course. Like, cultural appropriation, I think, is a weird concept. Like the TikToker who got surgery to become Asian, right?
Well, that's another level of cultural appropriation.
Right. But then there's like
wearing the Japanese dress to prom or whatever is like,
there's different levels.
You're celebrating a culture. It'd be one thing if you were doing something like if she had geisha face paint on.
It has the best of intentions, but it's still seen differently from someone else's perspective. Because like there's that, there's the guy getting surgery, and then there's this girl wearing a dress, and then there's like an American game developer just making an Asian game. That got some flack.
But you never know too. Like, people always jump to conclusions on that, and it might be a white girl that was raised in Japan and she has every reason to wear that dress.
Oh yeah, that's true too.
So it's like people jump to conclusions about stuff like that, and it, like I said, like a African American native that's part of a Native American tribe. Like you can't be mad at that black dude for wearing a headdress and dancing around a fire or whatever. So. It's not like the cultural appropriation thing is like, hey, if you're going to call somebody out on that, like, you probably need to talk to them first and see what, yeah, sure. There are people doing it, and some people, it's whether they're doing it to be disrespectful or not is the thing.
People don't focus on these amazing outliers in different racial cultures. Like a black guy dancing around in a headdress, he was raised in that, aspect. He, if he experienced that, then we could truly believe that, he has the right to do that.
Yeah.
But that's because he's been through that experience to properly do that dance and give off the emotion like, no, I feel this with everything. This isn't just something I'm interested in. This isn't just a fad that I want to do. This is my identity.
Well, that happens. I mean, you know how many friggin' white people that like get really into like samurai culture or something like that, or you're like, man, I mean, you get super interested in things like that, and it's like being like taking Brazilian jiu-jitsu is racist because you're white. Like, what? Like, how is that? I mean, like, well, that can't be the case. So
There's this story of this child. It was a white kid who was raised in China. I forgot his name, but he spoke fluent Chinese. He knew everything about Chinese culture. The kids would call him the golden one or the golden boy because he had blonde hair, bright blonde hair. There's this, I forgot his name, but back in like the Edo period or something, there was a black slave who was traded to a daimyo and he became a samurai.
Yeah,
he was a black samurai, and I think they made an anime about that. That was pretty cool.
The Samuel L. Jackson one, Samurai Jack or whatever.
You know, and then there's another story of that movie of the first weeaboo, the first otaku that had Tom Cruise. What was it, The Last Samurai?
Yeah. Well, so Thomas Segura has a bit about that too. He's like, you're not going to believe this, but there are Asians that live in Mexico and they speak Spanish.
It's just that's just like the culture and the heritage that in that area is passed on through the people in that area, but anybody who just happens to be picked up and plopped in that area can easily inherit that culture and identity.
Yeah. I mean, basically you have to assimilate, and like it happens whether it's through trading or conquest, which
there are some weird stuff though. Oh man, Donald Glover touched on this really well in Atlanta. He went to like a house party for a black female friend who was married to a rich white guy who was obsessed with African culture. Like he had memorabilia, he made treks there, he knew the language, he did poetry, he drank Hennessy, and Donald Glover's character was like, "What is this? This is so weird." Because like he obviously knows so much about the culture and loves the culture and respects the culture. It's just it came off as like awkward, not off-putting, because Donald Glover brought it up like, you're making it really hard to not like you, because like it's from a genuine place, but it's not something he was necessarily raised on. But it's still the fact that he put that passion into it, and that, I don't know, it's just, he means no disrespect by displaying, and I suppose some people could see it as indulging the culture when it's not your own, but when it really depends on how you.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it's hard to draw the lines and be like, this is where this culture begins and ends, because like they're all influenced by each other. Like any culture that traded with another culture has been influenced. Like the only one that you can say is a culture on its own are like these Amazon tribes that have never been like contact with any other people. Like yeah, that's a infiltrated culture. They're like, they've never seen white people, and that's a culture. But like all these cultures that have been trading with each other for so long, like it's almost impossible to draw lines and be like, that's where this one begins and this one ends. And any Hispanic culture is the big one. Like and even saying that, like Spain is very unique in its genetic makeup from things that happened pre Jesus, basically. Like all the ancient stuff that happened in Spain made their genetic makeup like some, like, I forget what group it was. Like there's some like barbarians that came in and killed all the men and all the children, and basically just left the women. It's like, so it reset the genetic makeup in Spain just like through genocide, basically.
Yeah.
And that's why the Iberian Peninsula is so unique and easily identified. And there were so many, like, so you got Africa, Europe, the Middle East, all coming together in Spain, and it made a very unique genetic makeup there. So it's like they're very identifiable.
I think that's what made the Philippines so, because it's geographical location plus its amount of resources. And so it's in the weird, perfect spot to allow all these cultures to mix, albeit violently at times.
Yeah.
But I still have to appreciate that for forming the identity that is Filipino.
Yeah.
It came from a terrible place, and but it still came to be. And if it didn't come to be, I wouldn't come to be.
Yeah. And those, I think about this a lot too, is like the language that people speak really has a big effect on how that country develops.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, Filipinos speaking Spanish, it probably helps them, you know, trade with the rest of the world more than you would think, you know, because like they're, you know, we've got, you know, Central America, you know, Spain, you know, they can, Portuguese are pretty close, like they can understand each other fairly well.
Yeah.
So like, and I think the French were in the Philippines for a while too, but the, like, if you're like, have a very specific dialect or a very specific language, it's gonna be hard for you to communicate, you know, as a country and do business with other countries. So like, it does help with trade and stuff like that to start mixing the cultures a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But
Trading for sure helps when it's respectful like that instead of just pillaging.
yeah.
But trading and pillaging are very different. Okay, there's. You tell me if you consider this racist. I think it's funny. There's there's this story of this. It was years ago of this Chinese man who
Mhm.
was born and raised in Texas, I believe, and he runs this wood mill and paper
Mhm.
mill, I think. And this was during a period in China where they were running out of chopsticks because their forests were being eaten by pandas.
Yeah.
And so he started making chopsticks in Texas and shipping them and selling them to China.
Mhm.
And before he would ship it out, he'd put in big letters on the box, "Made in America," because he's so used to everything saying "Made in China."
Yeah.
And I was like, it's not racist, it's patriotic.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know.
It's not about race, it's about the culture.
Yeah. I
It's
mean,
about trade.
yeah, I was about to say that's more of just a supply and demand thing. I don't think the made in America issue.
That's the way the news, the video made it seem. It's like he's, you know, it's overtly about race. But he
I was about to say
it was
what,
like a little joke on his part.
I was about to say that's what sucks now is like that is a non-story that somebody tried to turn racist and make it into a story.
It was just a funny coincidence.
It's not like I mean, if he was shipping, like, if there was a video of this dude in a freaking Klan hood stamping "Made America" on there, that might be different. But yeah, I mean, you're making something. I mean, he's fulfilling their need for something. There's not really. I mean, I don't know how you put even if you're like, there is a racial aspect to it. It is not racist because there's no hate involved.
Right. I just like to see the ironic coincidence. That's it. It's just like oh, they're buying American-made chopsticks from an Asian American when we're so used to buying Asian products.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
So
I don't know.
If you drew like a map of that, it's just weird. It was just a weird situation of how it came to be.
Yeah.
It's just all these coincidences coming together. Like one, it's just. Is it funny? I think it's funny because of how unlikely it is.
Yeah, it is. That one of my favorite stories was that there is a plumbing company in Texas that sold their old truck at an auction. And then on like CNN, there was a news article about the Taliban, and they show a video of that truck with a 50 cal mounted in the back of it with the Taliban driving around, and his phone number is on the side with him, and he's getting calls and getting death threats and stuff because like, hey, how did your truck from Texas make it to the Taliban's got it with a gun mounted in the back, and he sold it at auction, and somehow it made it over there.
No, I'm not surprised.
That is
put in the work and then have to attach to get myself.
That is a wild story. Oh man, that brings. Oh shit, I don't have it pulled up. We're gonna have to do that one day. But so one of the things that I wanted to do on this podcast is bring up old articles just something that like reminded you, like an old news article that stuck with you over time. And if I got to bring this up, one of them that stuck with me, I remember, I think it was 2016. I was at work and I pull up this article. Oh shit.
I don't know.
I can't spell. But are there any old articles that really stick with you?
Old articles.
Like I'm gonna give you a pretty freaking sweet example here. If I can, hang on, let me pull up this picture.
I like headlines. I remember old article headlines.
Yeah, that's
like,
basically. I mean,
like there's one I remember about.
So this one, yeah, it's from January 11th, 2016. The Texas butthole tickler. So the story is that this guy would break into your house at night and tickle your butthole with a feather. And this was reported by like multiple news stations, and it turned out to be a fake article. Like,
I love that.
But like they actually reported on this like it was a real thing. And then it ended up being fake.
People are so funny. They just, because when you see something in a physical sense, with even visually, it's like, oh, that's real. I see it, and now it's concrete. It has to be real. Why would anybody make that up?
Yeah, that one's.
Why would anybody report that? Just.
Yeah. So apparently it was a prank the whole time. So like some dude wrote an article about a guy breaking into houses and tickling people's buttholes, and the news took it and ran with it. It was like, this is a hilarious story. And then it turns out the whole thing was fake and nobody was actually doing that.
There's this one article I had to, headline I saw. I don't know if it's real. I hope it is. But it was Jeffrey Gordon's porn midget lookalike found in ditch being eaten by badger. I was like, wow, there's so much to that sentence. I don't know. It's just I love when there's so much implication in as little as possible.
Yeah.
I think that's what I try to do with comedy. It's like, how much can you say with as little words as you can?
Right. Yeah. The economy of words is important. Like I have a problem with that, like being wordy, and that's one thing. Like as I get a joke wrote out to do it on stage, I'll do it on stage, and then I'll watch it back on video and be like, "There's a better way to say this. There's a better way to say this," and just start tweaking my words, or and just looking like there's something that might be just slightly funnier that I can replace that with and just make it a little bit more better. And I'm trying to do that with all my jokes all the time. And that's usually my process is like, I'll write it out to where it maybe won't be funny at all, and then work on it and then do it on stage. And then I'll start tweaking it after watching the videos and being like, cause you get that feedback. And then sometimes like there's a joke I'm working on now where I know the line's not that good, and it falls flat, but sometimes the joke where you're like, oh, that fucking sucks. The joke about that being a shitty line, it gets a better laugh than just having a good line there. So like,
I like doing that last night a bit. When I tried a one-liner, and I tried pulling out my phone and saying it, because I haven't looked at my notes, and how did I say it? I was like, oh, let me look at my notes really quick. I guess I'm in the army now because I'm going. Like reading it as if I don't remember saying it, and then just immediately dismissing it. Like, no, that's not good.
yeah.
It's people like it when you laugh at yourself too, because then they feel comfortable enough to laugh at you.
Yeah, I'm really like, especially like July, I did a bunch of shows and open mics and felt like I was like doing good. And then like next month we don't have as much shows. And then I felt like I was like, I'm falling off a little bit. And then here lately, I'm like, I'm having a hard time because I sleep during the day. I'm like freaking getting 4 and 5 hours of sleep and then trying to go on stage. And then my brain's not functioning because I've beat my brains out. And I have problems with that anyways. But when you're like 10 concussions in and trying to remember jokes, it's hard. Like that's one thing. Like I have to
I just
have it
never remember not to
memorized.
drool, really.
Yeah, if I'm like trying to come in and out of jokes, I struggle with that hard, especially if I haven't had sleep or enough sleep. So that's one thing. Like I gotta memorize my jokes better to the point where I can come in and out of them. That way I can interact with the crowd and then get back into the joke. Right now, if I get out of the joke for some reason, it's hard for me to come back to it and be like, just jump right back in. And it's different with different jokes. Like, you know, my main jokes that I do a lot, I can do it better. But some of the ones that I haven't done very often, usually my dirtier jokes, because I'm not doing them at all the places, like those are the ones that I can hop into them out of nowhere and usually get through them pretty good. But if I get stopped in the middle of it somewhere, I'll struggle to get back going again. And I'm trying to get better with that. And I feel really weird about trying to write clean jokes. And then I'm like, I feel bad when I go back to those old dirty jokes. And I'm like, I really pay attention to where I'm doing them now. And like, I don't like, I struggle with like, should I just fucking lean into it? Cause I like these dirty jokes. This is probably the comedy that I'm going to end up doing anyways, but I'm trying to do some clean shit to get into the clubs and stuff like that. But it's hard to like be in both worlds at the same time.
Liking your jokes and making sure they work, they don't always coincide.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing that I feel like people, one reason, like of course, my appearance, one thing. People, when I get up there, I look like an asshole, so they don't immediately fall in love with me right off the bat. So I have to win them over. And the material that I'm doing is, I feel like, and when I get in front of most crowds, they're ashamed that they're laughing at my joke. They're laughing, and I'm getting them laughing, but they're like, oh shit. So. Like
a reluctant laugh, I feel like is one of the best laughs.
Yeah, I think I think I get a lot of that, and that's why I don't get a lot of people going like, that guy's my favorite. They're like, I don't get a lot of people going, that guy's my favorite comedian, because they're laughing out of shock and it's caught them off guard more than it's just what they like. Yeah. So I don't know. Like, I mean, I don't see myself getting past that. I mean, I think it's just going to be that way forever.
I mean, people, they'll think just because they're getting shocked, it's not what they like, because some people like getting shocked. I think funny, as much as that's the focus, I think it's the last thing I'm trying to consider when writing comedy. I've always thought like, oh, it has to be funny. It has to be funny. I'm trying to be in more of a mindset of, one, I want to like the jokes I'm saying, and two, what was two? Make it memorable.
Yeah. I do, like, I've wrote some jokes where I'm like, this would be better coming from a comic that just rants, like a freaking Bill Burr, like rant style comic. And I'm like, I don't know. I was like, I don't think I can do that right now. At this point right now, I was like, maybe someday I can do this damn rant style. But right now, like, I don't feel comfortable attempting it. I was like, maybe someday I can get into them. But it's like, I'd be really leaning into the asshole thing if I start ranting. You know what I mean?
I don't think you look like an asshole, especially as soon as you start talking. The cadence of your comedy, for me, is like a ponderer, like a thing. Yeah. Like you're just talking about stuff as if you just thought about it the other day.
Right. Yeah.
Cameron Carter is pretty good with that. In my personal opinion, if you accentuate the fact that you're like perhaps pondering, not like go or something, like your own way of letting them know, it's like, oh, that's just what I'm thinking. Yeah,
I definitely have some parts where I'm like, I need to start going a little bigger with act outs and stuff like that. Like I do like the bare minimum when I have like an act out on stage or something like that. I'm like, I don't get very animated with some of the stuff that I definitely could. I'm like, it's like there's a spot for me to do that, but should I be doing it or not?
I think one thing I like in comedy is when you start a setup with a question that kind of like puts the small idea of what the joke's going to be about.
But
in
it
your head.
almost has to be rhetorical when you do that, because
Yeah,
if you're
exactly.
expecting, depending on where you're at, if you're expecting a crowd reaction, you never know what the fuck you're going to get.
For sure, rhetorical questions as a form of like a setup.
I like to answer I have a couple where I answer, like I'll ask a question and then immediately answer it for them. Like,
there you go. That's how I think.
it was
that's,
like, I was going to,
cool.
like, I have the one joke where I was like, I was going to ask you this, but I'm just going to assume. And like I'll do, I do that because I think I heard, I definitely heard it on a podcast where a comic was like, when you're early on in comedy, don't ask the audience questions because you never know what the fuck's gonna happen. And it's like, and even if they don't respond at all, that's probably the worst thing that can happen. But
there's so many responses I could give, but if you get like, I don't know, that just makes it awkward. Like, hey, you could say something.
Well, I mean, it almost seems like, and then you get into a situation where you're like playing charades and they just keep blurting shit out in the middle of your set. And then they start stepping on punchlines and shit.
And then that could set it up for a bad precedent for other comedians. And then that's always weird. But rhetorical questions for sure, I think are a great thing. I think that would.
But I think, especially when I first started doing comedy, which I went back and watched some of those old videos and how nervous I was and everything on stage was crazy. But when I would I'm walking to the stage. I would get like Hot Chicks in Comedy get this same treatment. Apparently, you hear them talking about it's like as soon as you like hit the stage, people start going to the bar and getting drinks or going to the bathroom and stuff before you even say a word. And it doesn't. I don't think it happens to me as much, but it might just be because we're doing it at better locations and stuff like that. Yeah. But I mean, last night it kind of happened a little bit. I had some people walk out right before I started, but it's just kind of like a assumption, like this dude doesn't look funny, so I don't, I'm not going to stick around. But I don't know. Also, I think I'm into comedy far enough and gotten good enough to where it doesn't really matter anymore. But like it's not really an issue anymore. But I definitely think it was early on.
Of people just like walking.
Like I definitely get what chicks are saying when they say like like you hear like female comics say all the time, like, oh, it's a female comic, let's go I'm gonna go take a smoke while so,
it's always weird being the comic that people take the smoke on.
Yeah, that's just by your looks or whatever, they're gonna be like, yeah, I'm gonna go take a smoke, or I'm gonna go to the bathroom, or go to the bar.
Pay attention to the audience too much. Like there's like 3 or 4 faces I'll focus on.
So that's one thing I'm struggling with too, is like I do this fucking autistic shit where I look over the top of them where I'm not actually looking at them. Like I never make eye contact with anybody in the crowd. I'm always looking over the top of their head, and like to make it look like I'm actually looking at them, but I'm not. Just because like I don't want to get distracted. So it's almost like I'm thinking. I'm thinking to myself, but I mean, I don't try to look like that on stage. I'm just looking over them.
I think that helps, though. I think that adds to the I'm just pondering.
Yeah, like, I mean, I don't do any crowd work, because for that reason, and like I said, coming in and out of the jokes is a big issue for me. But I don't like that crowd work thing. Like, that's going to be a tough egg to crack for me, is like trying to get into some crowd work, unless it's just spur of the moment shit.
That's true. I think if I was going to do crowd work, it'd have to be like mean, maybe like sassy.
Yeah. Little rusty. Was there anything else you want to get into while we're here?
I think that's about it. Comedy, race identity. I think that sums it up.
Yeah. Hopefully people didn't check out while we got serious there for a minute, but, so I have a show in Fayetteville, Prairie Street Live on October 14th. I think we're probably going to do some more comedy competitions on Wednesdays at the Majestic or something. But, Adam is not funny on Instagram to stay up to date on that stuff. Do you have anything you want to plug?
Let's see. Upcoming stuff. A lot of open mics. I think the latest show, or the next show I'll be on, is we'll both be on that the Grove comic dress up show.
Yeah, that's gonna be fun.
I'm very interested to do that. I need to hit up Ben about it. And then the Halloween show on the 27th at Old Town. I'm excited for that. Gonna be trying to do like I'm approaching that as doing like he wants us to wear. Sam wanted us to wear outfits, like a Halloween costume.
I was gonna ask somebody that, or are we supposed to wear? Are we supposed to try to dress like the person's set we're doing, or are we supposed to dress like in a Halloween costume?
Right. I think you're supposed to try to dress up as the comedian you're performing as.
Oh.
Mine might be a little easier now that I have longer hair. I'm just gonna let it down and then.
Oh, I really thought about committing to this and
Or like
shaving my eyebrows for Conrad. But then I was like, well, if I don't shave the beard, then it's going to be pointless to shave the eyebrows. And I'm not shaving my beard. So I was like, damn it, I don't think I can do this. But I would just walk around looking like a psycho for like 2 or 3 weeks.
We should just ask each other for like a set of each other's clothes and try to wear it even if it doesn't fit.
Oh, I'll bust out a Conrad's jacket. That'd be hilarious.
Man, I'll be puffing up.
Be fat guy in a little coat on Conrad's jacket.
But for the Halloween show, I'm excited for that because I want to try to do a comedy set as my character, as my outfit.
Nice.
That's why I tried to do some of that.
Ooh, that's a good idea.
werewolf stuff.
Yeah, I might have to do a set as Nick Cage.
Oh, I would love that so much.
Man, that would be something to practice. But thanks for...
You're ready for it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for watching the Playing Your Fools podcast, and we'll see you next time.